That's a song that's titled Abizuo, which means thank God, thank you, which is one of the local dialects there. So a lot of times, and this is actually at our friend's church, Kona. He works on the farm with us at the Agriculture Center, and so he is a pastor there, so we like to visit his church. He usually has preaching done in Gio and then translating it into English, and we always have a dialect choir sing a selection like this one. And then we always have an English choir sing a selection as well. And so you probably heard this in the background. This is a calabash made with a gourd and beads. And I am not very rhythmic in shaking this very well, so I'm not going to do that. But I wanted to show you guys just what that looked like. And for us, worship at this church is always a time to just quiet our souls. I don't understand everything that's being said, but I know Abizuo is repeated over and over and over and over again throughout all the services there. And it means thank God. And it's a time where we just come and we thank God for everything that he's doing in our life. And that's kind of what tonight is about, thanking God for all the things that he's doing in Liberia and being able to share that with you guys. So.
This is actually in the basement of Kona's church's new building. And so they're not yet moved in because they don't have the roof on yet. But that's typical the way it's done. You build it as you have the funds and the abilities to and the resources to build it. And so they're in the basement now. They have a beautiful new building though, and so they're doing great things. We knew that this church was a special church before we even before when they were in a church that was dirt floor. It was a locally made mat using some like bamboo and other plants for the walls, and a tin roof, which will still be a tin roof. But the people are special there. Thank you guys for coming again. I'm Nathan, and this is Anna Glenn, and let us just introduce ourselves for you guys, even though I think all of you guys know us too. Most of you guys know us. But Anna grew up right here in Cockeysville, and she's one of yours, Epworth. She's come from you guys and your congregation, and we owe a lot to that. I owe a lot to that as well, too. And she went to University of Maryland, studied agriculture, general agriculture, agriculture science and technology, and also animal science. And then at University of Maryland, she was a part of Campus Crusades for Christ, a Christian organization on many campuses across the United States. I'm Nathan. I'm from Highland, Maryland. I grew up going to Mount Zion United Methodist Church, and Anna and I actually met studying agriculture, animal science at University of Maryland. That picture was just a little picture of us on the beach getting some much needed relaxation time. You can tell we're a little tired. Actually, it's at the end of a trip for the University of Maryland students that were there visiting and doing work with us. meeting the students and that we work with so often, and that was a great time for us at Connection as well. So, a quick recap on how we ended up in Liberia. So in 2016, actually in late 2015, we were working the jobs that we were doing here. So I was a high school agriculture teacher at North Hartford High School, and Anna was an agriculture extension educator right here in Baltimore County. And in late 2015, we saw an opportunity with an organization called AgriCorps, and we saw that they mostly worked in Ghana, and we said, okay, well, that is something that was on our minds and on our hearts, and it looked like a good opportunity that we were really passionate about, so we applied, not knowing what was going to happen, and then after we applied, we did the interview process and everything. We ended up getting it, and they said, well, we're happy to have you go to Liberia. And we're like, what? What? Okay, all right. So we ended up in Liberia. We taught high school, at a high school, agriculture for our first year with AgriCorps. We also helped to be leaders in FFA and 4-H, and that's something we're really passionate about, is getting youth involved in those opportunities, not only for agriculture, but more especially for leadership development, because we know the impact that they had on not only our lives, but on the United States, our country, and we think that that's something that can really have a great impact on Liberia as well. Liberia is a country that's founded by freed slaves in the early 1800s. Freed slaves from the U.S. Went back on a ship, and there really wasn't a lot of them that survived, but the ones that did were able to make a colony and started it, and it grew and it grew, and now we have Liberia. The population is almost 5 million. A fifth of that or more is in the capital city of Monrovia, post-war. 63% of the people live in poverty. The economy, even right now, is struggling. Incentives are broken, value chains are broken and unhealthy. And because of that, partly because of that, on the Human Development Index, which is a ranking of the development of a country and the health of a country, they're near the bottom. And we can, of course, attest to that. 75% of the population is illiterate, and of course, I think many of you guys know the challenges that they've had, but the civil wars and overthrowing, coups, overthrowing of governments, and leading into a civil war. That's a civil war unlike you would ever want to imagine, and they finished that. They were able to get through that. They were able to have a good election where we elected the first female president of any African nation, actually, and there was a lot of aid and money going into Liberia, and they were doing well. And then, of course, Ebola comes, and Ebola was a really tough time for the country as well. And then part of what we know is a big problem as well is that there's a mixture of Christian and tribal religions, and they have these Christian and tribal religions that are sort of just mixing together, and morphing the truth and morphing people into different perspectives on life, and some of the tribal things that go on some are good, and then some are pretty nasty as well, and so there's struggles with that, and the spiritual warfare that goes on in that country is absolutely astonishing. So we are now with Hope in the Harvest. Hope in the Harvest is a mission organization that aims for personal transformation as well as agricultural transformation. We have 3 areas of work. Agriculture academic, we help run the agriculture department where we teach students at Liberia and International Christian College, which is in the background there. We have the research and development farm where we do experiments and we hope that we're building a foundation for greater knowledge and greater abilities for the economy in the future. And then we also are there to help LICC in any way that we can, the school in general. We want to, in everything that we do, we are using agriculture only as a vehicle for personal transformation. We hope that whether it's explicit or implicit, everything that is done is leading people to a better future, lifting them up, and showing them Christ.
Before we keep going, I just wanted to share a little bit about the protest business, as we call it in Liberia. If you guys have been reading our newsletters, you've probably seen some things about the protests going on in Liberia. You might have even seen it in news articles. I saw a Washington Post article about it this week. So there's been a little bit of turmoil in the country right now, just because, as Nathan said, the economic situation is extremely poor right now. The rate, the Liberian dollar, used to be $80 to 1 USD when we got there 3 years ago, and now it's 200 to 1. So that's a steep inflation there. And in the last couple months that we were there, the price of food literally doubled in the markets. And so this is a huge burden on the Liberians who are trying to feed their families. And there's also been a lot of problems with the new government. So we had one government at post-war from 2003 to 2018, and then they just initiated a new president in 2018, and he's been blamed for a lot of corruption and a lot of things like that. So people are unhappy about that. There's been literally, I think, $16 billion of Liberian money that was printed and not authorized and then taken somewhere. And so we're not entirely sure what's happened with that. So the jobs are not available, the economic situation is declining, and so there's a lot of people getting together right now to gather and do protests. And so when these first protests happened on June 7th, there was a lot of concern in the country because the last time there was a protest of this nature in 1980, there was a coup and the country fell into war. So this is what many people have on their minds, and there's a lot of trauma still from the war that is making the country very anxious right now. People are very anxious. We managed to get through June 7th with peace. There was about 5,000 to 10,000 people that turned out, a lot less than they were expecting. They presented their things to the government. I hear that there's another one planned for July 24th. So just be keeping that in your prayers. But I just wanted to share this so you guys could have a context of what Liberia looks like right now. And why what we feel we're doing is hopefully beneficial. And so, as he said, we use agriculture as a tool, not only to teach people how to grow more food, because there's obviously a need for that, but also to share the gospel. I really love the verse in Genesis. It's just a very simple verse, but it says, "Then the Lord God took the man and put him into the Garden of Eden to cultivate it and to keep it." And I love that verse because it just reminds me what our role is on earth as stewards, to keep and maintain the creation and the gift that God has given us. And we use agriculture, as he said, to talk a lot about our relationship with God. I think that once people understand, have this idea that we are created beings and there was a creator above us, it's a very humbling perspective, and it puts things into perspective for me. You learn how to care for the land for future generations, not just for now. We learn how trust and patience and how all of those things are part of agriculture. A farmer trusts in the rain. There's not a lot you can do. You plant your seeds, you do everything you can, but ultimately, it is in God's hands. And so we love using agriculture. There's a tool called Farming God's Way that I think we've talked about in the past, but it's just a curriculum that combines teaching agricultural practices as well as stewardship and biblical concepts and management practices. Okay, what's next? Sorry. And so for me, some of the ways that I teach agriculture is through the classroom. As he said, I studied agriculture and then my master's is in agriculture education. So teaching is a big passion of mine. I have a lot of fun with it. Some of the classes that I've gotten able to teach are food processing and preservation, agriculture education, so training more young people to go into the high schools and teach agriculture, much like we have here in the U.S. This is one of my students. She's practicing her lesson plan at the end of the year, doing her final presentation. These are our freshman students. They're just learning how to do some of the basic concepts of laying out a field, adding the nutrients, and then this is one of my junior students, Leroy up there. I don't know why, but he is obsessed with pruning. That is what he wants to talk about all the time. So I think he's going to have a really big orchard one day. And but he shares that knowledge with lots and lots of the other students, so I love that. These are some of the other students. This is Mutari up here. He's helping with the grinding of feed. These are our freshman students laying things out again. This is one of my senior students, Titus. He loves being in the laboratory and looking at things very up close. In Liberia, the school systems do not have laboratories. They don't have microscopes or anything like that. And so when the students learn biology and they learn about these concepts of the cell and microorganisms and disease, and they even have to take tests on the parts of a microscope when they pass their senior year classes, but they've never seen one. And so it's an incredible opportunity to be able to share with students this microscopic world underneath the microscope, to have them see those things for the first time. And for me, as a Christian, it's the thumbprint of God. Just seeing those tiny little things, I can't imagine how they were created otherwise. And then these are some of our students learning how to clip the nails on my rabbits at the place there. I never thought that I would be working with rabbits in an area where rabbits could be used as food. Growing up, I showed rabbits, as most of you know, in Rabbit Club, and I didn't really know how God was going to use all that knowledge I had built up over the years. But I found a lot of opportunities to share that with people there, because rabbits are a great source of protein that grow very quickly and can feed a lot of people. So it's kind of crazy how that's worked out. And then these are...
I'm sorry, Anna, but you gotta explain that.
I forgot that picture. I put that there because I was teaching an agriculture education class, and I'm trying to get my students to do engaging lessons, because a lot of times teachers go up, they write on the chalkboard, you copy it right. If you don't copy it right, ruler on your hand kind of thing. So that's not really encouraging people to learn. So I went in there, I think I was teaching about, I think I was a little bit upset that they turned in essays to me that they had not proofread. It didn't feel like they proofread. So I went in there and I was talking and I was doing my lesson. I had all this stuff on me and people were like, "Mrs. Gunn, are you okay today? Like, did you lose your mind this weekend?" But I was teaching them,
They started taking videos.
Oh yeah, they took videos of me, that was embarrassing. But I was just trying to get them to understand how grammar is important. We need to present ourselves professionally when we write papers and we submit these after we graduate. Otherwise, it's going to be a distracting chaos. No one's going to get to hear what you really have to say. So we were talking about the importance of communication, I think. These are some pictures of our sophomore students. They took a fruit and vegetable class and they each had to grow their own plot. And so I had not been out to visit the field in a few months, and they started bringing me cucumbers that they had harvested. I'm like, wait, what? Where are these? Show me. And they're like, "Oh, you gotta come see our plots. They're on the other side of the school, And I was like, "Oh, okay, okay, I have 5 minutes, let's go." So we run out there, and everybody's like, "Oh, Mrs. Glenn, take my picture and put my plot here," And it was just really awesome to see them having these practical experiences in agriculture, to see them stewarding that little piece of land that was given to them and using it to yield results. Food for themselves, which actually I thought they would want to go out and sell it, but they gathered up like a giant bowl of cucumbers and gave it to me. and presented it. They said, Mrs. Glenn, you are our teacher. We need to give you this as a thank you. And so this is for the school. This is for the department. And all the other things they grew there, they sold them and they got money for their department, which I thought was incredible. And I just love getting to be able to see them and work with them in our classes. We also have some pretty great teachers there. So you saw some of my students. I love them. We have pretty awesome teachers here. This one is Jacob on that side there. He actually is in Israel doing his master's right now. And the mission that we work for, Hope in the Harvest, is helping to pay for some of that. And then he will come back and he will work at the school there. I got to work with him the first year and a half I was there. And he is just an incredible person. He teaches there. He also has an elementary school that he runs because he wants more children, more people to know agriculture and to know, to come to faith. Then,
And he also has a daughter named.
Oh yeah, Anna. He named his daughter Anna, which is really cute. Yeah, his wife Patience, we get to see her a lot. She's really friendly too. Yeah, so I should have put a picture of baby Anna up there. In the middle we have Johnson. He's in the suit there, and he actually just won Teacher of the Year in all of Liberia, which was really cool for us. And his students were super excited for him. They had him come up to the school like the day after, I think, and they're like, we want to take pictures of you with your trophy, you know, and share it everywhere. So he's really cool. And then one of our other teachers, this is Wansa, and she leads all of our freshman students, which those are the biggest classes. And those are often, you know, where you're trying to figure out who's serious about this yet, who's not. And so she's been a blessing to us at the school there as well. I think we talked about this last year. We have a relationship with the University of Maryland, which is our alma mater, so it's pretty cool to still be working with them. We have a class called Global Classrooms, where we have 10 students going to a class at University of Maryland, and then we had 12 students on our side, and we video chatted every week, because we actually have really good internet where we are, and they had different professors come in from that side and do guest speaking. We have professors from Liberia come in and do guest speaking. And we just explored all these different topics in global agriculture. Gender in agriculture, nutrition in agriculture, climate in agriculture, all these things. And it was just incredible to see the students in Liberia just mixing, talking, and sharing ideas with the students all the way in the US. And the idea is that at the end of the class, they kind of come up with a problem or a project to address some of these challenges that they've been discussing all year, because we don't want class to just be something we talk about but don't do. So they had projects that they came up with. They implemented like a radio program so we could share more information with farmers. And then they did some more awareness in the community about our laboratory, and then they did more outreach with high school students. So we were supposed to have some University of Maryland students come, but due to the protests and things, the university had to pull out, but the professors still came, so that was still a really cool opportunity. And you can see them video chatting here. This is the University of Maryland people, and this is us here, and you know, sometimes we have to say, excuse me, our monkey is being really loud right now in the background, can you repeat what you said? Or, you know, the parrots are going crazy, can we repeat what we said? So it's an interesting learning environment. But
For us, we have two worlds on each
Yeah.
side, one of the table there, and it can be difficult sometimes because we want it just to come together perfectly, you know, and it doesn't do that. The differences in the university level in Liberia and the university level here are pretty major.
yeah.
But when we sift through all of the nonsense, we realize that the relationships pull up the Liberian students, our students, to another level. And so it's pretty cool to see when, and it's been a really tough thing to get to do, managing all those relationships, cross-cultural relationships, with people that that are just getting to know Liberia, and Anna's done a really fabulous job with that.
And out of that, something that was born was an outreach club for our high school students. Like I was saying, we have about 10 high schools in our city, Ganta, where we live, And so there's a Roots Club now on campus that gets together and tries to go out and encourage and teach these young people in high school, because there's this idea in Liberia, much like there is in a lot of parts of the world, that agriculture is for the dumb people, for the poor people, for the lazy people. And so there's this idea that that's what agriculture is. And so we're trying to take out our university students to be role models and showcase, no, agriculture is actually an area where we can feed people, we can give back to our communities, we can take care of one another, we can learn through science, it's critical thinking, it's business management. And so that's been really cool to see them want to go back out and influence their younger peers. I just wanted to show you some of our students. This is our student leadership. They help a lot in planning events and getting more farmers on campus. This is Ezekiel, our president, Fenny, our vice president, Peace, I think she's our secretary, and Martha Lynn as our treasurer. We've also done a lot of activities with the Peace Corps this year. They bring their volunteers in, or the volunteers bring their counterparts in, and we've done a lot of trainings with them, which is cool because then we get to talk a little bit about Farming God's Way and share information about that, but also we get to train more people who can go out into more communities than just us. And they can share this information about how to prepare your soil and how to add compost or how to preserve your foods.
So this is our research center from a bird's eye view. This is the Agriculture Research Center, better known as the ARC. And this is the football field, and more school buildings are over that way. We have poultry, chickens, and more chickens here, pigs. And then on the other side, this is a goat area. We have ducks and rabbits right here, and then our fields are here. And then you can see, and this is typical Liberia, you can't go pretty much anywhere without seeing it. You have upland, and then you have lowland, the swamp there. And so you can see, first off, you can see here and here that it's pretty brown, right? It's dry season. We have corn growing in the swamp. Hasn't rained maybe for 2 months here, but the corn can grow in the swamp because the water's being sucked up from the bottom, from the ground. And so you have sort of two different ideas on agriculture there, two different seasons and also two different ways and things that you have to be aware of with the wet season and the rainy season and the dry season. The Agriculture Research Center, along with the agriculture department and the school in general, we have big ideas and big visions, and this is our vision. We want to provide preeminent agriculture research and extension services. As we are going out and moving forward, we want to be a leader in that. We think that's what Liberia needs, a leader to help show the way. We certainly cannot be the only one, and we are not the only one. We have a connected group of people that are doing great things in many different sectors, and lots of other missions that are helping along the way. We also want to be a diamond in the rough. Going along with that, we want to be sort of a diamond in the rough example of an organization that actually thrives. And I want to put stress on the organization and in that teamwork. Relationships are extremely difficult in Liberia, even from my understanding, from what I hear and just my natural understanding from observations and from listening to conversations. Even the communities are sort of, we talked about being a friendly neighbor earlier this morning at church, and the communities are sort of not a friendly place to be, not all the time. We do see the good times, but then there's the bad times that people don't like to talk about, and I guess that's everywhere you go, but there's a lot of pulling down people that might get up and might be working their way up. And so we want to be an example of an organization that works well together as a team. And we think the only way that we can do that is our understanding of who we are as God's children. And then we want to be partners with the government of Liberia down the line for economic development. That's in the future. These are big visions, but that's what is on our heart. So some of our initiatives on our research farm is layers, so egg layers, chickens, and their feed production. We are trying to build not just a house, but a whole mansion, or maybe let's say we're trying to build a church building, and we need to start with one block at a time, and that's what we're doing with our research too. Right now, the only people that are doing egg production in Liberia know that they're not going to make profit. They're only going to maybe get close to breaking even. But there are some people doing it, and so that's a start. People are doing it. There's a mission down the road that's doing it to help serve lunches and have a little bit of a protein source in their lunches for their children of their school that they run. There's larger farms and there's smaller farms, and everybody's involved trying to help, or some people are trying to make profit and make a living. We see that it's not really possible yet, but we see that someone has to be willing to take a risk and to innovate and to try something new, to think creatively and critically, and that's where we see that we are. Here you can see that we're dropping off feed to that mission. It's a Lutheran mission in Bonga, the next city over, and they have chickens, and they're doing wonderfully, and they buy feed from us. We're not in it for business, but through that partnership, we're developing new information. We're developing knowledge and avenues for knowledge, and people are coming together to help to figure this thing out, and we want to be a part of that, and we see that we think we have a space to be a part of that as a research center. Major example, protein in the feed is very expensive. So how can we find a way to find something more local that we can harness and use as a cheaper protein source?
Yeah, and I think Nathan didn't mention that the eggs that we eat in Liberia are all coming from the Ukraine, or like Brazil. India, yeah. So, and I think we forgot to say this at the beginning too, over 70% of the food in Liberia is imported, which does not make for a stable country or a food secure country when you are importing all your food. If a crisis were to break out again, what would happen? And so that's why we're really trying to encourage growing locally, using what we have in our hands. They have really good soil there. They have a lot of opportunity. So this is just one of those.
And we know that eggs are a good protein source, but they're actually they have a lot of different nutrients. They're an amazing asset for someone's ration, and they're about the cheapest livestock animal product that you're going to be able to buy. So that's one of our first initiatives. Another initiative is to go along with that is corn. Or we really should say, because we're open to other ideas, corn or another common energy source. But to go along with the rest of the world and the fact that corn grows very well there, and their neighbor countries are growing lots of corn as well. Just trying to figure out what are the challenges, and we've learned some of those, and then start to add bricks to our house, our research house that I was talking about. Every new information that we learn, we can add a brick. And sooner or later, we're going to have this house built. And I like to tell people a lot, whether they're in agriculture or they don't know anything about agriculture, if they visit us there at the farm, I like to tell people that a large difference between the U.S. and Liberia is the U.S. has built a foundation of knowledge and understanding on a few different things in agriculture. and we're able to feed our country with that corn, wheat, soybeans, to name the main ones, right? And Liberia is, and so we have a house, and Liberia has nothing in terms of knowledge and research. This is sort of like a typical local corn plot, okay? And even if they did try to grow the corn nicely in rows and make it look perfect, it would still look like that because it's a corn variety that is not well developed and not worked on and not well understood either. And then we have a variety of other livestock species that we demonstrate and we work with. You saw in some of the pictures with the classes that a large purpose for them is providing hands-on opportunities for the students to learn. But we also know that each one of these species that are on the farm has, for the future, has an ability to be something, another project that we work on, and specifically improving genetics and helping people to learn new management practices. An example I will give, and it's actually mixed in with the students, there's a research class that's ongoing, and it's some of our senior students. They're ready to graduate almost in December. And we have Pekin ducks. This is a local duck. Okay, but we have Pekin ducks, which are the white ducks, which are the ducks you may have probably heard of a lot because I think they're the most farmed duck in the world. Commonly eaten in Chinese food. And they're well developed, and nobody else has them in Liberia, so we try to grow them and disperse the genetics so that it can help others. We have a student, Fenny, who is working on looking at different protein levels in the feed to see which one is best. And that doesn't just mean which one helps to produce the most eggs or produce the fastest growing animal, but it's the most economical, the most profitable one. And so she's looking at all those things and coming there almost daily and working with some of our research technicians and our animal technicians to put on this study so that it will help Liberia in the future. And then another of our initiatives is making sure that we are pouring into our workers. So I believe these next two are both